Perhaps this should have been the first video that I did here, but I was so taken away by the technology, I got a little carried away and emphasized that in some of the initial videos. But let's now talk about the other side of Suno, and that's the risks that are involved in using it as a composer. And there are a couple different category of risks. One is the legal risk, of course, and the other is a professional risk. So first, let's talk about the current state of who owns what when you use Suno. When you sign up for the paid version, be it the Pro or the Premier version, Suno gives you complete rights to the output. You can do whatever you want with it. You can monetize it. You can call it your own, I guess, if you want to. Ethically, I would never do that if Suno created something in an output that I was going to use and distribute. But the bigger risk there is Suno does not guarantee that whatever it outputs is without copyright infringement issues. And when you sign up for Suno, you take full responsibility of all copyright claims that might be made against the output that Suno creates. So just be aware of that. If you go and ask Suno to create some Bach, you will hear bits of Bach in it that you recognize. Now, they normally don't last more than a few seconds apiece, but it's quite obvious where Suno is getting a lot of that material. So make no mistake, if you ask Suno to generate music and it's not music coming out that you recognize as your own, you cannot be sure that that music is not actually part of something some copyright owner has put into Suno. So just be aware of that. If I hear anything coming out of Suno that is not directly related to the music that I put in it, I will normally delete that version and try and create again till I get something that is totally based on my music. And even then, I probably would never distribute that as a product. I would take it, use ideas from it, perhaps, reorchestrate it, redo it, and then create something that I would consider the end product. On the flip side of that, when you enter your music into Suno, you are giving Suno and its affiliates, if you read the fine print of their terms of service, the full perpetual rights to use that music any way they like in regards to the program. So while you may hear someone else's music coming out in Suno output, someone else could very well hear your music or bits of it coming out in their output. Now, in that case, do you have any legal action to sue that person? That I'm not so sure about. If you're going to use the output, you really should consult a lawyer to determine what you can and can't do with that output and what your risks are. Bottom line there is never put anything into Suno that you hold in high regard, because you might hear bits of it down the road in someone else's output. So there are some big risks involved there. I use Suno mostly to have fun, to generate ideas, as a real compositional tool for production. I would not really recommend Suno in that case, though many people are using it that way, creating songs, putting them on DistroKid, releasing them, and some are actually monetizing them. So that's kind of the legal risk. Then there are a whole slew of professional risks that you have to consider using the tool. One is a loss of skills. I suggest you use Suno as a collaborator, not a replacement for a composer. Don't just have it generate music and use it out of the blue. Always try and relate whatever Suno outputs to something that you input, and you'll probably have pretty good success in that regard. Always try and relate Suno's output to something that you input. You don't want to rely on Suno as a crutch. You don't want it to become a habit. It's a tool, like a DAW. only unlike a DAW, it has greater possibilities of risk and misuse right now. Now, one thing you could be doing in Suno is taking stems from it that it creates, assuming that the piece matches the length and timing of whatever you're doing in your DAW. Perhaps you want to use a Suno voice to create a demo of something, and you have most of that already in your DAW. Well, that's perfectly, I think, acceptable use of this. You can always hire someone to sing that as well, but many people do this kind of thing. They create music in Suno, they create stems, and they import it into their DAW and really then use it along with most of their own music in the DAW. Some people actually take Suno output and re-record all of the stems, all of the voices in it to create something new. Now, they could, of course, be subject to a copyright claim there as well if they're taking the music out from an output that has a problem there. Now, related to that, a lot of people will say Suno can reduce originality. Again, what you put into Suno, hopefully what comes out of Suno, you recognize as being totally related to what you put in it. Suno can be a great orchestrator. Suno can be a great teacher in some regards. The idea of using it for ideas and not production, at least for now, maybe in the future, the output of Suno will be so good, it will be like having a symphony orchestra of your own inside the box. One thing I found is there are certain outputs of Suno, like it's jazz, that are quite amazing in terms of, if you know nothing about jazz, it could teach you some jazz improvisation, could teach you some jazz comping. Also, Suno can teach you basic scoring techniques. There is an opportunity for this tool to be a training tool. I'm sure that the creators are not really that interested in that element of it, but it certainly can function in that regard. So back to reduces originality. One thing is that Suno will always add unwanted notes, harmonies, rhythms, tempos, fluctuations that maybe you don't want in a tempo that will be extremely difficult to remove. Reverb it can add, though now there's a new option that you can output stems and remove the reverb on them. And in that regard, one of the big risks of Suno is that it promotes compromise. It might output a few notes you'll use, and maybe those aren't the notes you really wanted. But in Suno, if you're going to use its output, it's impossible to edit down to the note or chord level. So if you're going to use Suno output, you are 100% guaranteed to get output that you really didn't want. Now, in some cases, Suno can output some stuff that you liked even better than what you put in it. That's happened to me quite a few times, and it's one of the great things about Suno, using it for ideas. So don't settle for Suno's output unless it's better than what you actually created. If it's not, do it yourself. Figure out how to use Suno as an idea creator and create the music that's in your mind and in your heart. Finally, there is opportunity to misuse Suno's output. There are certain fields like sync and other things in the film industry where you can't have any AI component in your submissions or they will reject it. But how is someone going to know, especially maybe in the future, that there's no AI output in your submissions? Well, that might be very hard to detect unless there's metadata in the audio output that someone can analyze and detect that it is, in fact, AI generated to some extent. So there's an ethical element here that if you're going to create and distribute anything using AI tools, ethically, you really should state that when you are distributing it or trying to sell it even to somebody. Now, I'm sure there are other risks that I haven't talked about, but that's more than enough. I can see why a lot of established composers wouldn't touch Suno with a 10-foot pole. But beginning composers, people just starting out, don't really know a lot about what they're doing. Of course, listening to music is the best teacher. Going to school, taking some courses, that's good too. But using Suno as a generator of ideas and as a training tool in that regard certainly has some benefits. And finally, probably the worst thing in some composers' minds is just a stigma of using AI and what that would do to their perception of themselves or others' perception of them, or even maybe damage their careers if they are perceived as being an AI composer. Well, all these things are certainly things to consider, of course, but I think in the future, composers are going to be using AI tools to do all kinds of tasks to speed their workflow, give them ideas. Even today, AI is all over the place. Just look at all the areas that it's being used. Almost all the mastering you hear out there has AI components now. Auto-tune and vocal processing, that's all over the place. Convolution reverbs are really a kind of AI. DAWs that have humanizing functions, beat generation, auto chord generation, all these new functions that are coming out in DAWs. AI is moving in that direction to make things a lot easier to create. Sample libraries in themselves are kind of an AI thing. Certainly a lot of them are introducing advanced AI techniques and how the samples are generated and how they can better simulate real instruments. Then you have the generative sequencers on the modular end, and algorithmic composition that's been around for a long, long time. That's just a partial list of where technology is heading. So it's only predictable that AI tools for composition will also work their way into the composer's workflow. Right now, there's still a big stigma, but I predict in the future, composers are going to be using these tools not to replace themselves, but as tools to help their workflow.